Ba't sila ako?
No, they're back.
Konnichiwa yun
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we'll continue reading from this.
So, wait, nasa electric space.
So we were taught, I think we read,
We're reading about peace of mind.
yeah. Okay, so did we read truth number one? I don't think so. Did we finish reading it? I don't think so.
No, I think so.
Pretty long.
We're actually up to the peace formula. Lord Krishna gives the ultimate peace formula, 529. We read up to that and then we went on to Bhagavad Gita.
Well, okay, yeah, we read peace formula, but then we went into truth number one, because there are these verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so. Okay, anyway, this is pretty important stuff, so let's read it again. So we're on page 3, truth number 1. Yeah, the peace formula, of course, is understanding Krishna as the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices. Krishna is the supreme proprietor of everything. And Krishna is the best friend and well-wisher that we can have. Knowing these three things, a person can obtain peace. So, many times I've seen people, disturbed in mind and anxiety and having trouble dealing with people. And it's because they don't really have strong faith in Krishna. I mean, they might accept that Krishna is God, but they don't have really strong faith. And because of that, they're also not sure of what's going to happen to them in the future. And that leads to a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in one's life. And it creates a lot of mental distress. So we read that a person who lacks a ultimate goal in life is usually not peaceful. And that was the second chapter, verse 66. And so we read this, and it says there that unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 529. So these two verses, 266 and 529, are connected. When one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestation, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have peace, real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. That's the point. If one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. It's just like the day before yesterday, I was talking to someone, and they were their dilemma was that they are studying many material strategies for, mind control, attaining happiness, and so forth, health, and so forth. But the more different techniques that they learn, or strategies they learn in order to teach others. There's yoga, there's meditation, there's Ayurveda, there's health, there's all these different things. There's Kriya Yoga, there's Ashtanga Yoga, there's different types of yogas, and there's Ayurveda, and so forth. But the more these different strategies and techniques that they learn, they're not really sure if it's actually Krishna conscious. And so I explained that the dilemma is that these different techniques, it could be Ayurveda, it could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be Reiki, it could be, these different techniques for health and well-being don't solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. So, therefore, the real solution to all problems is to become eternal. Now, the fact is we are eternal already, but due to material attachments, we become convinced that it's necessary to be born, to get old, get sick, and die. And we're forced to do those things, and only because of material attachment and misconceptions. So, the real solution to all problems of life is to regain our position as eternal beings. Now, we're already eternal, so therefore, as long as we have misconceptions, we can eternally go through the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. There's no such thing as when you die, everything is finished. That's a myth. It's not true. When you die, you go into a state of deep sleep or forgetfulness for some time, not very long, but for some time, and then you come back again in a new body. Or you can go to heavenly planets, again, you get a new body. Or you go back to Godhead, and then you get a spiritual body, or you get our original spiritual body. So the solution to all problems is, therefore, becoming Krishna conscious, by which we attain eternal life. And Krishna promises that many times in the Bhagavad Gita. In this booklet, I quote many of those verses. Okay, so why is it that people suffer? So let's take a look at this and explained here. Lord Krishna, this is page 3 at the bottom. Lord Krishna established the material creation to help those souls who have revolted against him. To help those souls who have revolted against him. That a chance has to be crossed out, that's a mistake. To rehabilitate themselves and come back again to the spiritual world. In other words, this material creation is a place where we who have revolted against Krishna are given a chance again, or are given an opportunity to rehabilitate ourselves and go back to the spiritual world. He gave them a chance to try and enjoy separate from him by exploiting material nature, knowing well that his material energy is impossible to overcome by any human efforts. Thus, frustration and defeat are inevitable for all living entities by the natural course of birth, old age, disease, and death, which are inescapable phases of the material body. So as long as we have a material body, due to material attachments, we are forced to fail and be frustrated because the body is subject to birth, old age, disease, and death. The Lord gave all living entities in the human form a process to satisfy their material desires through a system of sacrifice to the demigods. However, he also instructed that such material enjoyment is not the purpose of human life. Whatever benefits they may achieve by the process of sacrifice are only to help them have an easier time in the material world to attain material needs, so that they can concentrate more time for self-realization. So this is misunderstood by all the priests, well, not all, but many of the priests that do Vedic rituals. The purpose of the rituals is to make it easier for people to attain their material desires so that they have more time to consecrate the spiritual, not so that they can enjoy more the material world. And this is not explained by the priests, and they fall into the same trap as the people who are asking them to do these different rituals for material benefit. So they just throw out the whole idea that, these material benefits are not the real goal of human life. They're just a what you call a dispensation. It's something that's given by Krishna to make it easier for us, so that we will consecrate more time to Krishna consciousness.
Prabhuji, it is concentrate or consecrate?
Consecrate.
What does that mean?
Dedicate.
Not concentrate, I like it.
Concentrate, no. Consecrate, or to dedicate more time.
Yeah, it's like walking and giving it in a way.
In the present age, most priests mislead people to think that attaining material benefits in this life and the next through Vedic sacrifices is the goal of life. This is true in Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and many other religions that engage in blessings for material benefits such as health, long life, prosperity, material happiness, salvation in a heaven of sense gratification, etc. Such materially inclined priests use the system of sacrifice to make a living, and therefore they encourage people to misuse the system for material benefit, thus ignoring the real purpose of life. Lord Krishna does not approve of the unnecessary worship of the demigods. The demigods are simply agents of the Lord that act as conduits to receive offerings and transfer them to the Supreme Lord, and also to receive benefits from the Lord, to offer to the performers of sacrifice. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has given a good example of Maharaj Katvanga to understand this important point, which is misunderstood by hundreds of millions of pious followers of different religions. Worship of the demigods for material benefit will not lead to eternal life with Lord Krishna. Maharaj Khatvanga was a formidable warrior who was unconquerable. He was requested by the demigods to engage in fighting the demons. Khatvanga helped the demigods defeat the demons who wanted to reward him by offering him material benedictions. Khatvanga wisely asked the demigods how long, okay, so that's a misspelling, how long he had to live, and he was informed that he would die very soon. The king immediately left the demigod's abode. Demigod's abode, where one can enjoy heavenly pleasures much greater than on the earth planet. He returned to his own home and began earnestly to focus his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Khatvanga was not a materialist, interested only in family, material possessions, and sense gratification. He had the vision and the determination of a genuine devotee to see and use everything in the material world in the service of Lord Krishna. He it's all mixed up. Okay, he was successful in his meditation on Lord Krishna and attained eternal liberation by remembering Lord Krishna at the moment of death. And you can see his story in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 1st chapter, 13th verse. Lord Krishna explains, Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhukta prabhurevacha natumam abhijananti tatmenatas jivanti te. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifice. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Bhagavad Gita 9:24. Persons seeking material benefits by worship, by the worship of the demigods, do not realize that the benefits offered by them, Ayur, Arogya, Aishwarya, long life, health, material opulence, and more, are all temporary. The demigods themselves are subject to birth and death. Only Lord Krishna, also known as Mukunda, the giver of liberation, can confer eternal life free from birth, old age, disease, death, and all material entanglement. Devarsi bhutakta ninam pitrinam nakim karunayam rinicharaja. Sarvatmanaya saranam saranyam gato mukundam parihritya kartam. Anyone who has taken shelter of those feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligations, and is taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.541. The recipients of the demigods' benefits, who worship them for material blessings, are elevated to the higher material planets, where the duration of life is very long and sense pleasures are vastly amplified. Unless they are purified of the material conception of life, they will return again to the lower planets. Lord Krishna explains, Tamte bhukva swarga lokam vishalam, shene punye martya lokam vishanti, evam trayi dharmam anuprapamam, gata gatam kama labante. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas, Rig, Sama, and Yajurvedas, achieve only repeated birth and death. Bhagavad Gita 9:21. By the allurement of material sense gratification, which is offered in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, many pious people are duped to think that these heavenly pleasures are the end-all of spiritual life. There is a vast difference between material heavenly pleasures and spiritual joy experienced by love for Lord Krishna and engagement in his eternal pastimes. Lord Krishna explains, Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipashchita vedavada rata partha nanyat asti tivadina karmatmana swargapara janma karma phalam padam kriya vishesha bahulam bhugaishvarya gatim prapti. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Bhagavad Gita. Oh, mistake again. 2nd chapter, verse 42 and 43. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada elaborates. People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karma Kanda portions of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially the Jyotishtoma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to the heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices. And men with a poor further knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attractions. Unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karmakanda section of Vedas, it is said, Apam somam amrita abhuma akshayam havai chaturmasya yajna sukritam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the Somarasa beverages to become immortal and happy forever. So when it says you're immortal and happy forever, it means in a relative sense. Compared to life on the earth, life on the demigods' planets, it seems like it's immortal and happy forever. You know, we only live 100 years. There they can live thousands and thousands of years, 100,000 years, 10,000, 100,000 years. Right? So, but it's not eternal in the full sense of the word. And it's not happy in the full sense of the word. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have somarasa to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. So somarasa is a beverage that the devas drink, and it increases their lifespan for another 10,000 years, and it gives them more strength for sense enjoyment. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanda, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women and having a profuse supply of somarasa wine. Such bodily happiness is certainly sensual, therefore, there are those who are purely attached to such material, temporary happiness as lords of the material world. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 42nd, 43rd verses in the purport. Somarasa wine will enhance one's energy and usefulness for 10,000 years. It will not give one eternal life. Because it prolongs life, it is sometimes said that one becomes immortal, but this is not a fact. The longevity of life may seem immortal to less intelligent persons. Even on the upper heavenly planets in the material world, there is birth and death. Compared to life on the earth planet, the duration of life in the heavenly planets may seem to be eternal due to its long duration. Somarasa wine is a favorite beverage on the moon, served to heavenly denizens. The moon is a heavenly planet. This is further clarified. Dumoratris tata Krishna Sanmasa Dakshinayana Tattva Chandra Masam Jyotir Yogi Prapya Nivartate. The mystic who passes away from this world during the smoke, the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or the 6 months when the sun passes to the south, reaches the moon planet but again comes back. Bhagavad Gita 8.25. Sometimes you wonder, all these things in the Bhagavad Gita? Yes. Yeah, that's why you have to read it very carefully. A lot of information about it. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada explains, in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila mentions that those who are expert in fruitive activities and sacrificial methods on earth attain to the moon at death. These elevated souls live on the moon for about 10,000 years. By demigod calculation, that's much more than 10,000 of our years. You would have to multiply it many times to equal our years. And enjoy life by drinking somaras. They eventually return to earth. This means that on the moon there are higher classes of living beings, though they may not be perceived by the gross senses. So, one proof that they haven't gone to the moon is, it doesn't, what they say the moon is doesn't correspond to what the Vedas say. There is never a possibility of peace of mind for those who remain attached to temporary pleasures and possessions. If one dedicates the time and effort to understand the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, he can overcome the cycle of birth and death and attain the eternal abode of the Lord. Janma karma chame divyam ivam yo veti tatvataha tyapudeham punarjanma naiti ma veti swarjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita 4.9. The truth of Lord Krishna's pastimes, his plenary or absolute expansions in the spiritual world and the material world, and his avatars in the material world, when understood by the devotee, confer eternal salvation and elevation to the spiritual world. The powerful effect of spiritual knowledge, rightfully understood, is liberating from the cycle of birth and death. Recognizing Lord Krishna as the supreme beneficiary of all sacrifices is the essential step toward uninterrupted peace. The sacrifice performed in knowledge of Lord Krishna is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. Bhagavad Gita 4.33. The purpose behind the process of sacrifices given by Lord Krishna is meant to educate, to develop authentic knowledge of the Lord. This results in dispensation from all karma, in other words, freedom from all karma and material miseries, which frees one to engage in a loving transcendental devotional service for the Lord. Unless one evolves to transcendental knowledge, the sacrifices one may perform are no more than material activities. Attaining transcendental knowledge of Krishna, one's sacrifices become genuine acts of devotion meant uniquely for the pleasure of God. It is impossible to attain peace without elevation to the platform of transcendental knowledge, culminating in pure devotion to the Lord. So here we see attaining peace is related to developing transcendental knowledge, which should lead to constant engagement in devotional service. Okay, so this is interesting discussion, but it's all about this verse 529, and the first part of that verse is accepting Krishna as the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. So these are, if you want peace, then there's 3 truths. One is to accept Krishna as the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices. And not to mistake the karma kanda sacrifices recommended in the Vedas as the end all of spiritual life. They are simply given to help us obtain our material needs easily so that we have more time for spiritual life. They're not meant as the goal of Vedic practices. So you can see how it's very easy for people to be misled and not want to go further than simply getting more material success and sense gratification in the material world. But a devotee has to see through that there's much greater, something much greater. So, people that teach all these different techniques, there's yoga, there's meditation, there's Ayurveda, there's different healing techniques, and there are different strategies for more sense gratification, making more money, and so forth. I mean, you look, the advertisements, you can become a coder in 20 weeks and then get a job making beginning with $70,000 a month. You ever hear those advertisements? Yeah. And then you can become rich by flipping houses, buying and selling houses. And you don't even have to put up your own money. They teach you how to get money for free to flip houses. I mean, anyway, all these crazy plans there. Or, they say, you can become very healthy by hormone replacement, or this thing, or this, go to this doctor, your health will improve, and then you can have more sense gratification. And the constant barrage of publicity on the radio, on the television, all over the place. It's all for increased sense gratification. And then you go to a temple or a church, and then they tell you, in churches they teach prosperity theology. God wants you to be rich and happy in the material world. Or you go to the temple, they do archana, blessings, so that you become free of your difficulties, and you also become prosperous and so forth. So everywhere you go, there's all this enticement and advertisement for better sense gratification, making more money, and enjoying life. And then, you can buy a special bed, you can buy, a bigger television, you can buy a special washing machine, you can get, a massage chair, you can get a foot massager. I mean, it's unending. It's all about increased sense gratification, better health for better sense gratification, making more money for more sense gratification, and so forth. And then you go to the temples, and they also do this puja, and you'll have more success. So therefore, in the mindset of people, is that, they're looking for anything that'll help them be healthy, live longer, and have more sense gratification. So to see through that is very difficult. And to understand that there's something better than that, that's even more difficult. And that's why I was advising this person. I said, look, you give seminars, 1-day seminar, or 1-week seminar. And people say, oh, that helped me so much. But it didn't really help them, because they're still subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. I said, you should give a 10-year course, how to attain immortality. Then that would help people, right? And how do you do that? Anyway, you become Krishna conscious, fully Krishna conscious. And then we see, someone like Haridas Thakur, or someone like Dhruva Maharaj, or Prahlad Maharaj, or all these great personalities, their life is, analyzed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, or, Katbanga Maharaj. These people actually have attained immortality. They've solved all the problems of life. Or you have the story of Jesus, etc. I mean, it's all about re-attaining our state of immortality. That's the real purpose. Like, for example, if you're in jail, anyone that can help you get out of jail, they're a savior for you. So some people have been put into jail on false evidence. So sometimes, they've been in jail 20, 30, 40 years, and some lawyer takes up their cause and gets them out of jail and proves with modern techniques of forensic evidence that it wasn't this person that committed the crime. And then after 30, 40 years, they get out of jail. They expected to stay in jail until they died. Right? Someone was in the vicinity of a murder, and they were only 16 years old. So the person, a witness said, he's a black guy, about 5'9". So they arrest this 16-year-old kid that's 5'9" and black. Right? And he doesn't know what's happening. And he doesn't know about lawyer, he doesn't know about his, his rights, right? And they scare him, they interrogate him, they keep him up, they don't let him sleep, until he finally admits, I committed the murder, right? And then they convict him, and they put him in jail for the rest of his life. And he didn't do it. But because he was not very smart, he looked a little bit like the murderer, right? He was black and he was 5'9". And he ends up in jail the rest of his life, And then 20, 30, 40 years later, some lawyer, reads about him, and it takes him like 5, 6 years to prove in the court that you got the wrong guy. And it's happened in many, not many, but there are stories like that, real cases in which some young kid was in the wrong place at the wrong time. They ended up in jail for the rest of their life. So, we are like that. We, due to lack of experience or lack of knowledge, we end up thinking that all this false propaganda is true, and therefore we should just go with the flow, go to Walmart, answer the advertisement how to flip houses, get this news supplement that will solve all your problems, and so forth. We're going from one thing to the other, buying this one hope. It's called hope against hope, and it's all for increased sense gratification. So here's the real peace formula, and Krishna is giving it. So we shouldn't be fooled by propaganda and advertisements and all this nonsense. Actually, nothing should take our mind away from studying Bhagavad Gita on a regular basis. So, we were reading the second chapter, verse, what was it, 38, 39?
I think 39 is done.
No, I think so.
Huh?
68. Yeah.
16.
No, 68 or 50.
No, Shona, that was in some context.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are references. No, I
So-
think it's verse 39.
Yeah, 39, I have some underlines, so probably it's done.
We must have done it. Did we finish the whole thing?
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah, I have underlined last time.
Yeah, it was explaining Sankhya Yoga.
Translation. In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work.
Okay, you see? Without expectation of sense gratification. Key phrase. Everything we discussed up until now was based on the expectation of sense gratification, right? The ayurarogya aishwarya, the flipping the houses, the how to get rich investing in the stock market, Ayurveda, diet, working out at the gym, all these things. It's all with the expectation of sense gratification. So here it says, activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. So most people are working with the lowest they're working with the lowest quality of work, or in the lowest quality of work for sense gratification. So we can see how unique Krishna consciousness is. It's working for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification. Okay, go ahead.
Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete.
So that means you're never a loser in Krishna consciousness. But you're always a loser in material consciousness, because you'll be stuck in a cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. So no one can be a loser in Krishna consciousness. Go ahead.
1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas in material activity without 100% success, there is no profit.
So let's say I do 1% Krishna consciousness. That stays with me eternally. And if I want to start Krishna consciousness again in this life or next life, I begin with already 1% completed. Go ahead.
Ajamala performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There is a nice verse in this connection in
Well, see, because he remembered, or he said the name of Narayana at the moment of death. So he had a few percentages of Krishna consciousness, and because of that, he decided to name his children after the names of Krishna, or at least his last child. And the last thing he said was he was calling out to his child, Narayana. But he got the benefit of saying the name of Narayana, and it eradicated all his sins. Because he said it without a material desire. He just said it purely, no material desire. Even though he wasn't calling Krishna, he was calling his son. But because he named his son Narayana, he got the benefit of purely saying the name of the Lord at the moment of death. Go ahead.
If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly. Or as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world, yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul?
Right, so one is never a winner in material life. There will always be a loser. But if they engage in Krishna consciousness, they can never be a loser. They can only be a winner. See? Because whatever you do in Krishna consciousness is never lost. Whereas in material life, whatever you do is lost, everything is lost at the moment of death.
Material activities and their results end up with the body. But work in Krishna consciousness carries a body again to Krishna consciousness.
Carries a person.
Carries a person again to Krishna consciousness, even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance of in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of a great cultured Brahmana or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one a further chance of elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness.
Right, so this explains more specifically in the 6th chapter. Starting with the verse 41. Actually 40. 640. So 640 says, the Supreme Personality Godhead said, O son of Prita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you see, it quotes the same verse he quoted already in what was just read.
240.
Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 was quoted in the purport to 240, and now it's quoted in the purport to 640. Tyakva Swadharma. If one gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead, there is no loss or degradation anyway. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and yet not gain anything. So everyone who just has a material life is a loser. And anyone who engages in spiritual life is always a winner. They never lose anything. Okay, so let's read that purport 640. What is it?
640 purport.
If someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and yet not gain anything.
Okay, so let's go back to 2nd chapter, 40th verse. In the purport, the same verse is quoted, but the translation is a little different. Let's read that translation right now.
What here?
No.
240.
So if someone gives
If
up,
someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly?
So, and then here, in 640 says, if someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and not gain anything. So that's why we say that the devotee is always the winner and the materialist is always a loser. And the materialists say the materialist is always the winner and someone who engaged in spiritual life is always a loser. You see, it's just the opposite. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. We continue reading. 640.
For material prospects, there are many activities, both scriptural and customary. A transcendentalist is supposed to give up all material activities for the sake of spiritual advancement in life.
Okay, so it says for material prospects there are many activities, both scriptural and customary. In other words, you can try and progress materially by following religious ritual activities or following family traditions.
I met someone in my office. I tried to convince him also, but he's saying in their tradition in South India, after 6th month of pregnancy, they don't worship anything. They don't even touch the Lord.
Yeah,
So even though I try to convince, they just
but that's they're backwards. In America, they don't worship the Lord at all. They don't wait 6 months of pregnancy. So they're behind the Americans. I mean it's ridiculous.
No, but then he asked another South Indian person, and he said, yeah, that's the custom. So everybody was saying, yeah, we have that custom. I was like shocked to know that they can have such custom.
Wow.
And when you try to convince, they said, whatever our parents say, we follow as is.
What if the parents says jump off a bridge? They will follow as is.
Yeah, he was saying, I want to donate now. This is the day I have to donate milk. I said, why don't you give it to, like, come on the Sankirtan and distribute there. We give it to everybody. He said, no, I have to give it to a person who actually gives, who does this donation.
What?
Like, even when I tried to convince him to give donation, like give the milk which his parents asked him as a custom to donate,
Yeah.
but they wanted him to donate only to homeless.
Okay.
So it's so hard to break anybody's customs.
Well, it's not surprising. It's called ignorance. Ignorance is very profound. We should not be surprised. Anyway, at least they're following something. Right? It's better than not following anything. Okay, so go ahead.
A transcendentalist is supposed to give up all material activities for the sake of spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness. One may argue that by Krishna consciousness one may attain the highest perfection if it is completed. But if one does not attain such a perfectional stage, then he loses both materially and spiritually.
Yeah, no, his material life is ruined, and his spiritual life is ruined. Go ahead.
It is enjoined in the scriptures that one has to suffer the reaction for not executing prescribed duties. Therefore, one who fails to discharge transcendental activities properly becomes subjected to these reactions. The Bhagavatam assures the unsuccessful transcendentalist that there need be no worries. Even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties, he is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten.
Never
And
forgotten
one-
by Krishna.
And one so engaged will continue to be so even if he is lowborn in the next life. On the other hand, one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna
So
consciousness.
this is the answer to your question then. They are following
Prescribed.
prescribed duties by their family affiliation in South India. But they're lacking in Krishna consciousness. So they will not necessarily achieve auspicious results.
But a lot of these rituals at the end of them, they say Sarvam Krishna Arpanamastu. So they say all the results go to Krishna. So they say that, and They say it's like for dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So they say, they say all those things, ayur, arogyan, but they also say like, you will attain moksha.
Okay,
I'm
what
not
do
saying it's right,
they, okay,
but
what do they say? Sarvam Krishna.
arpanamastu.
Sarvam.
Krishna, arpanamastu.
Arpan is like a Sanskrit or Hindi word.
Arpan is like
Arpan.
Giving it, yeah.
Arpanam.
Arpanam astu.
Us.
Let it
So
be.
it's together, it's mastu. But
Basically, all sacrifice goes to Krishna.
Yeah,
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
they
we
say
accept
that.
that. Right? Like
yeah,
that's
whenever you do the archanas and all, they do all that. And they say whatever you want, or like whatever the deity is for, but they say at the end, Sarvam Krishna Arpanamastu.
They say Krishna and not Narayana.
Depends on, they say that too. Some
Krishna,
priests say
that's what they
Narayana,
told.
but mostly Krishna Arpanamastu. At least Sri Vaishnavas, they say Krishna Arpanamastu.
Yeah, it sounds
So I'm
good.
learning,
The-
right? That
You heard it?
No, it
But
sounds
actually
better
once-
actually when you just say Krishna versus Narayan. That the tone, the way you say Narayan becomes a little difficult to say forward. Like
Yeah, it doesn't.
Sarvam
I have
Krishna,
heard
yeah,
this.
yeah,
One of
yeah.
my friends, he was offering bhoga to Krishna, and like,
No, they say Krishna
and then she
Arpanamastu.
didn't know what's the procedure and everything. She said like, this is what she said.
Yeah.
I just said this, and then I offer bhoga, and like I have no details about how to do it, so I just said this, and then. That's all.
Yeah, they don't even say Vishnu Prabhu. They say Krishna Arpanamastu. Sarvam Narayan. I never heard like that much. But Vishnu also they don't say. But mostly it's Krishna they say. In a way they accept that he is the highest. They say Narayana is higher, they do Lakshmi Devi Puja, and then also they say like Krishna Arpanamastu.
No. Okay. Well, see this, but this is answer to your question. It says very clearly here that one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. So your point is, if you're doing all these materialistically motivated pujas, they say, Sarvam Krishna Arpanamastu. Is that what you say? Yeah.
All I'm saying is that at least some priests are like, they know
Is
what
it
it
the
is.
priest that says that, or the?
Priests say that, and he makes us say that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the priest says that. Yeah.
Okay.
At least they accept Krishna is the highest.
That's what I'm saying. Like they know. They even Sri Vaishnavas say that, even though they don't agree Krishna is the highest in a way. Or maybe I don't understand what their philosophy is.
Does Srinivas Kedam say that at the end of the?
No, in Houston, one temple I went to, the Pujari said that.
That's what yeah. Was it a Balaji temple?
Yeah, it was Ashtalakshmi temple, but they did Hayagriva Puja, so.
All right. Well, anyway, here it's clearly saying that one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. Why does he say that? Because previous to this verse, there's another verse in which we've read this before. It explains that yeah, okay, so it's this purport here. So now continue reading the purport. Now it's gonna give you very detailed information of those people who simply follow strictly the prescribed duties, but they may not necessarily attain auspicious results. So this is the example of why bad things happen to good people. Okay. Go ahead.
The purport may be understood as follows. Humanity may be divided into two sections, namely the regulated and the non-regulated.
Non-regulated.
Those who are engaged simply in bestial sense
I
gratifications
mean, animal-like sense gratification.
without knowledge of their next life or spiritual salvation belong to the non-regulated section. And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures are classified amongst the regulated section. The non-regulated section, both civilized and non-civilized, educated and non-educated, strong and weak, are full of animal propensities. Their activities are never auspicious because while enjoying the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending and mating, they perpetually remain in material existence, which is always miserable. On the other hand, those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions and who thus rise gradually to Krishna consciousness certainly progress in life. Those who are following the path of auspiciousness can be divided
That means
into
the ones
three
who are
sections.
regulated. Go ahead.
Yeah, namely the followers of scriptural rules and regulations who are enjoying material prosperity. Those Number two, those who are trying to find ultimate liberation from material existence. And three,
Okay, the first one is the karma yogis. The second one are the jnana yogis. Okay, go ahead.
and number three, those who are devotees in Krishna consciousness. Those who are following the rules and regulations of the scriptures for material happiness may be further divided into two classes. Those who are fruitive workers and those who desire no fruit for sense
So
gratification.
there can be two types of
Karma.
karma yogis. One is they're actually pursuing that path for material purpose. And the other is they're pursuing that path, but their purpose is to please Krishna. So even though they're enjoying, and even though they're blessed with material prosperity, they use that prosperity only in the service of Krishna. Okay, go ahead.
Those who are up
They're
to
following the
fruitive
rules and regulations, both are. Go ahead.
Those who are after fruitive results for sense gratification may be elevated to a higher standard of life, even to the higher planets, but still, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. The only
Okay,
auspicious.
so therefore, those are the type of people, they follow the rules, but in order to enjoy material prosperity. Therefore, although it looks like they're on an auspicious path, they're not actually on the auspicious path because they still have a material motive. Those are the people, those are good people. Why bad things happen to good people? Those are the type of people where bad things happen to them. Go ahead.
The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious.
Okay, so now, even though the priest says Sarvam Krishna Arpanam Astu, if his lifestyle is enjoying the fruits of his activity, then it doesn't matter he's saying that, he's still materialistically inclined.
It's just saying it like us.
Yeah, it's just like a priest.
Yeah.
There's a
It's
priest, and he says, many times during the liturgy, he'll say, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, may you have peace. Right? And he's saying it, and he's making the sign of the cross, and he's praying, and doing all these things. But yet, after everything's over, then he goes home and watches television, drinks a beer, and who knows what else he does. Right? But every Sunday he's saying the liturgy, and he's saying it correctly. Right? So it could be the same thing with the priest. At the end of every puja, they're saying Sarvam Krishna Arpanamastu, right?
So it's not just the saying, you have to live the life that way.
You would have to be integrally dedicated. I mean, completely dedicated to Krishna. On and off the podium where you're preaching or doing the ritual.
So one
So you have so many examples of priests. They drive around big cars. They have nice opulent apartments. They have a big. They spend a lot of money, and they have a really lavish lifestyle. Right? Not all of them, but there are some. Especially the cardinals and the archbishops and stuff. So, is that proper? Like, are they actually following Jesus' example? Well, Jesus never had opulence like that. I mean, if you looked at Jesus, he was like a brahmachari, with basically very little material possessions. Right? He didn't even have a fixed residence. In fact, there's a long period between the time when he was like 14 or 15 until he was 30. They didn't even know where he was. It's purported that he went to India during that time. That means he was just traveling like a mendicant, right? Like a sannyasi and going to different holy places. Then he comes back and he starts his preaching mission. His preaching mission only lasted 3 years, from 30 to 33. That was it. The rest of the time, I mean, for that gap between 14, 15 till 30, they don't know. There's no description of where he was or what he was doing.
even it is written he had been to Puri Jagannath temple also.
But
In
not
Puri
in the
they say-
Bible. It's not in the Bible.
But in Puri people, it's written somewhere in there, they maintain all the journals, so in that it is written he was there.
It's very possible that.
And
he
that's
did.
what they say that earlier time they used to let everyone go into the temple until the Muslims invaded and they try to basically take the wealth from the temple, etc. That's when they stopped giving access to every people inside the temple.
Okay.
There's a story about him visiting Kashmir as well. But Jesus visiting Kashmir.
Yeah, there's a book like that.
Close to Europe.
Yeah, so I mean, what we're trying to say is that it is possible that they can say things correctly and still not be integrally on the path. That can happen to anyone. It's not even people in Krishna consciousness. So, and that's why bad things can happen to good people.
So Prabhuji, so karma yogi, there are two types, like who are doing the prescribed duties and using that
For
in
material
Krishna
benefit.
consciousness. One, like the good side,
Yeah, okay.
on the transcendental path they are in. And some they are doing the prescribed duties, but only for their objective is for sense enjoyment. So here we are putting good people as those who are doing the prescribed duties and they are going in the transcendental path, right?
Well, in making he's differentiating between the two here. That's why he says, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path.
So it was like between distinction between regulated and non-regulated. Everybody who's regulated is sort of good people, but there's still further classification.
Right. These are the regulated people.
Yeah.
And there's still further classification, as you said.
But
They're not
that-
non-regulated. They're following the rules. Right.
But
But
how it you are saying bad things happens to them.
well, they're good people because on the outside they're good people because they're following the rules. But
But
they're-
bad thing happens only if you don't follow the prescribed duties, as in the previous paragraph it says. If you do
not necessarily. Bad things can happen to people who are following, but whose purpose is not genuinely to please Krishna. The purpose is to enjoy the benefits that they get by following. So you have the example of archbishops or cardinals or sannyasis that have attained, maybe they have a lot of followers and they're using, the money and the whatever is coming not only for Krishna but also for themselves. And they're having a lavish personal life.
So basically simple living is the key, right?
Well, yeah, especially for sannyasis and highly placed, religious men. Yeah, they should give an example. Like Jesus himself, he lived a very simple life. He was not, enjoying opulent food, opulent living quarters, opulent this, opulent that. Okay, so now let's finish. The only auspicious activities.
The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious.
Okay, so now if someone is giving seminars about Ayurveda, diet, about meditation for peace and relieving stress, and seminars about how to be stress-free in your office and blah blah blah. Does that fit into this narrative here?
Yeah,
Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Is it?
they are regulated. They're trying to be regulated, but it's not in the next step. Being
Well, it's
Krishna.
not for
Liberation.
aimed at ultimate self-realization or
Yeah.
liberation
yeah, it is not there.
from the material bodily concept of life. It is not at all auspicious. Go ahead.
But Prabhuji,
Prabhu.
they say that you have to have good health. So for having good health, you have to take care of these things.
Well,
Without good health, how will you continue in Krishna
And
consciousness?
in the first time
So
when
it should
I-
be followed by that, like good health followed by Krishna consciousness. But if that is lacking, that is what we are discussing. Like they are still good people. They will be counted in good people, but bad things might happen because they are not going on that path to Krishna consciousness.
I understood differently. What Prabhuji is saying is this whole thing staying stress free or getting good health. If you are not addressing the real problem that is birth and those problems, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So all this course and everything or seminars is useless when it comes to that particular point.
Yeah.
But my thing is unless those seminar also is giving you an idea how to stay healthy, unless you are not healthy or something, then how do you continue in the real goal of
if you're regulated in your activities, you will be healthy. If you're regulated in your activities.
So that is the key rule for everything in Krishna consciousness.
Regulation, yeah. Well, regulated in devotional service, right? Yes, that's the key.
So one
The
example.
regulated principles, the regulative principles. Everything has to be, life is meant for tapasya. It's not meant for bhoga. It's meant for tapasya, right?
So one question, if you are finished.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So the question I have is, there are two. One go for fruitive results, even though they are regulated, and the other one don't go for fruitive results. But I don't say I'm very regulated, but it's always in Krishna conscious, it's always it's not black and white like that. So sometimes I'm I don't want any results, but sometimes I get caught up in that, attached to that. So is there any advice for that kind of mode? Most of the time I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I still want it, It's
I understand what you're saying. Look, we all have that. That was the question this person was asking me. They said, I'm learning all these things, but yet I'm not sure if I'm actually doing it for Krishna.
It seems like it's Maya sometimes taking
Yeah.
over.
And sometimes I feel as though I'm just going farther away from Krishna by learning all these things. Well, that's why this purport is so important. That's why we're reading it carefully. So it brings up all these questions, right? Krishna always looks at the motive. The motive, right? Just like the Dhruva Maharaj's original motive was to become a greater king, than his father who, did not favor him. He favored the son of another one of his wives, not him. So he wanted, he was a Kshatriya, so he wanted to outdo his father. So that was a material desire, but he engaged in strict tapasya, right, to be able to see Lord Vishnu. And he sees Lord Vishnu. But as soon as he sees Lord Vishnu, he forgets completely the purpose why he came. He realizes that it was not really the right reason. So we see that it is possible. I mean, obviously, Chaturvita Bhajanti Mam, Jana Sukritina Rijana, Arta Jigyasa, Arta Gyani Chaparatarsa. 4 types of people approach the Lord. 1 is in distress. 2, they're looking for a way to become wealthy. 3, they're curious. 4, they want to know what the absolute truth is. Those are 4 material reasons why they're approaching the Lord. So if they approach the Lord, but they go through let's say, a mentor or a guru who he himself has material attachment, although regulated. So they end up in that trap by following someone who themselves, although regulated, their purpose is material still. And that's what it's talking about here. Because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Activity in Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious activity, and anyone who voluntarily accepts all bodily discomforts for the sake of making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness can be called a perfect transcendentalist under severe austerity. And because the Eightfold Yoga system is directed toward the ultimate realization of Krishna consciousness, such practice is also auspicious, and no one who is trying his best in this matter need fear degradation. So, whether you want to follow the yoga system, like gradual elevation. What is the Eightfold Yoga system? It is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Okay. So if you follow that process, that process is based on a lot of tapasya also. But if your goal is to understand Krishna, just like Dhruva Maharaj, he followed that process. But it was to understand, to meet Lord Vishnu. So it was actually auspicious for him. And he became purified. And he took the instruction from Narada Muni. He strictly followed what Narada Muni told him. But if you follow a person who themselves are still materially attached, then it's possible that you remain materially attached even though you're regulated. So this explains a lot. This is something you got to think about a lot. Read it over and over again and think about it. Just because they say Sarvam Krishna Arpanam Astu, just like when Prabhupada was told that Gandhi said Ram Nam when he died. Right? So he said that, but that was just customary. It was like shocking. He's saying the name of Ram at the moment that, and Prabhupada is saying that was just customary. Because during his lifetime, he actually said, I don't really believe that Krishna existed. So what does it mean, Ram, at the moment of death?
And many people say he didn't say anything. He just, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
I don't know.
But how is that different from Ajamal? Like, he he believed in Krishna, but it just happened to be a chance that he is calling his son.
No, he didn't believe in Krishna. Well, he was living a sinful life. But he named it, well, when he said the name of Narayana, he was not thinking, I will get liberation, or I will get this, or I will get that. He just said the name without any purpose. So, if at the moment of death I say Ram Nam, because I'm thinking, I will go to Swarga, or I will get something, right? And that's like a customary thing. It's not actually purely saying the name of God.
But what if you think you will go to Vaikuntha, or like Ayodhya, that's what they say, one of the...
Well, okay, that's nice, but what does Lord Chaitanya say? Na danam, na janam, na sundaram, kavitam ba jagadishikamaya, mama janmani janmanishraya, bhavatat bhaktirahita. Right? I don't want any amount of I don't want any amount of wealth. I don't want any amount of followers, or or I don't want partners for sense gratification, and I don't want liberation either.
But this entire purport says liberation, and I'm not doubting or anything. I'm just saying this entire thing says liberation. And when they're
it says,
chanting,
or those which lead one to activities. The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Now, let's understand the difference between the Mayavadi's concept of liberation and the Vaishnava's concept of liberation. Okay. Vaishnava's concept of liberation is one is free of all misconceptions. So there's no obstacle to their serving Krishna in this lifetime. And Mayavadi's concept of liberation is that you merge into some eternal Brahman effulgence. Right? So there's two different concepts. The one Lord Chaitanya is putting forward is you're liberated in this world because you have no material desire. Your only desire is to please Krishna, and you're using all your faculties to serve the Lord. And you don't even want mukti, because you have a higher mukti. You're free, like Narada Muni. Sometimes he goes to Naraka, sometimes he goes to Swarga, sometimes he goes to Vaikuntha. He's free wherever he is, in the material or spiritual world. That's a greater liberation than merging into Brahman. That's why many, or most Mayavadis fall down from the Brahman realization. Whereas Narada Muni never falls down. Whether he's in Naraka, or he's in Swarga, or he's in Vaikuntha. So there's a difference between the understanding of the Mayavadis' liberation and devotees. Okay, so where is that explained? That is explained Bhagavad Gita. Okay, it's in the 5th chapter, verse number 11. And it quotes a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita by Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person even within the material world, although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities. He has no false ego, for he does not believe that he is this material body, or that he possesses the body. He knows that he is not this body, and that this body does not belong to him. He himself belongs to Krishna, and the body too belongs to Krishna. When he applies everything produced of the body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc., whatever he may have within his possession to Krishna's service, he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. He is one with Krishna and is devoid of the false ego that leads one to believe that he is the body, etc. this is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. So this is the liberation I'm talking about. There's a total absence of false ego.
So does karma not involve like if someone has to suffer or something like that? Like, will they be able to get over it? Like, the reason I'm asking is like my mom is going through a lot of pain, and she says that okay, I eventually want to go to Krishna, and she wants to do that, but the pain is sometimes taking her back, not like pulling her out of that thing. I'm not saying like she's perfect, but I'm just saying like it seems like whatever pain she's having is getting in her way of like being devotional all the time.
Prabhupada had a lot of pain also, diabetic,
No.
and he was in a lot of pain the latter part of his pastimes. He just tolerated it. It didn't stop him from being Krishna conscious. But that's definitely disturbing. That is Maya's trick. All these things come to disturb your Krishna consciousness. Now, if you let them disturb your Krishna consciousness, then they take over your life. But if you learn to tolerate it, continue in Krishna consciousness in spite of those things, then you're gently situated. It's not easy, but we should accept, the more you suffer in this life, the less you suffer later on. So therefore, for devotees, oftentimes they get more suffering in this life, and it's clearing their karma. We should not be afraid of suffering. We should be afraid of good times, where we forget Krishna. When you're suffering, you often remember Krishna. Now we should, purposely, cut ourselves so we suffer, and think, now I remember Krishna. But, anytime you live in the body, anytime we're in this body, there's going to be some suffering, right? It's the nature of the body. But if we're not disturbed by it, just like Haridas Thakur is being beaten and beaten and beaten, that he's just taking complete shelter in the holy name, so he's able to tolerate it. And eventually, he's free from it. Then Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, both of them suffered a lot because they gave up being ministers and became mendicants, but they tolerated it. And they were able to do great things. Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks on his way from India to the United States. He had another heart attack later on, and he had to go back to India to get some help. And then his devotees revolted against him, some of them. And so many things happened. His Bhagavad Gita translation was stolen. His typewriter was stolen. He had to retranslate the whole Bhagavad Gita again. So many things happened.
Did he ever complain? Why? Anyway.
Well, what good is it complaining? You just had to do it again. You complain, it doesn't really solve the problem.
Sometimes later you realize, I'm not saying it's for Prabhupada, but sometimes you suffer and 3 months later or something you realize it's a good thing. Because
You realize what?
you realize that, you expect something to happen and it didn't go smoothly, like being
Yeah.
stolen some things.
Yeah.
And then later you realize, oh, it's a good thing that it happened. Otherwise it would have led to that and I wouldn't have had a chance to have that. It happened to me so many times like that, That why is this happening?
Well, yeah.
And
You can't be defeated by setbacks.
yeah, you just accept it as like Krishna decided it that way, and then later he reveals that
Yeah.
it's for your own good that it's happened.
But then from
Something.
our side, it feels like there is no word to describe how exalted devotee he is, and if Krishna doesn't even listen to his
like puts him into trouble, how he will care about us? I am not able to put it in writer, but like, where am I, like, when it comes to, in what basis will I
Well, no,
negotiate
look,
with Krishna? You know?
we're in the material world. The material world, it's, Krishna describes it as anityam asukam lokam. It's yeah, it is it's a temporary place full of misery. Anityam asukam lokam.
And
Imam
same as,
Brush.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
It's same as Dukkalayam Masasvatam too.
same as Dukala Masasvatam, yeah. So it's described as a miserable place. Why should we think of it as not being like that? We're going to encounter it. People die. People get sick. There are accidents. There's economic downturn. You lose your job. There's war. How can we say it's a wonderful place?
Yeah. He has designed this house and he is telling like what he has designed, so like no way we can
Well, I mean,
go against
you know,
this.
it's a place where it's temporary and it's full of misery. That's a description of this world, given by Krishna himself. Right? So we should not expect it to be any different than that. That doesn't mean we should be depressed. It just means that we should be not surprised by it. It's just the nature of the place. Therefore, but in spite of all that, ihayasya hayadasya karmana manasajya akilasvapya vastasya jivan mukta sayuchate. One can still attain the state of jivan mukta even in this world. That's what Krishna is saying. So we have to learn to tolerate things and just continue devotional service and always be vigilant that our purpose is pure, not some selfish purpose. That right?
Prabhuji, with the regulated principles and everything, you get you get so nice control over your senses
Yeah.
that whenever any type of provocative situation happens, you are able to tolerate. The last class we had this discussion about like you said, will you eat from a dustbin like that? And I said, I don't know. Because I have seen certain videos where people would get lost in the sea, and then what do when until they are not found? Like
Well, they drink their own urine.
yeah, they
Because
do.
you can't drink the salt water.
Yeah, crazy things they
And
do.
then,
Even they are
knows
trying to
what
kill
they
each
eat.
other to eat also.
yeah.
But if for let's
Well,
say
as
it
long as
happens,
you're not dehydrated, you can live. Even, I mean, you can. If you get dehydrated, you know, not drinking anything 7, 8 days, 9 days, 10 days, you die. If you don't eat, you can go maybe 60 days without eating, maybe even more.
but if this happens to average people, he will react differently. And if it happens to a person who is spiritually very elevated, he will react differently. Basically, he will have much control over his senses, even though he will be able to tolerate his
Well,
that situation.
if you learn to tolerate now, then you can tolerate in a difficult situation. Yeah.
So yesterday, lecture from Prabhuji in temple for about the food part of it. So he said like there's some articles in our like scriptures which talks about how to cook non-meat as well. So he was he said he didn't read it, but then
What
he
scriptures are you talking about?
in Ayurveda some places things are there.
But that's
like-
not our scripture.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so okay, it's in Ayurveda. So he said like then he tried to find out why that exists. So then answer he found was like we have to live. If there's certain bad situation is there, you have to live so that then you can do practice of Krishna consciousness or whatever for your for the journey. If you die, then you just wasted your thing so that was the gist he said. And
Well, no, I mean, if there's nothing to eat,
But we have got so
and you're starving to death, then it is possible that we can eat meat.
yeah, that is what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Prabhupada has said also. But, that would be a really dire situation. Let's say you have an airline, your airplane crashes in some far off place,
Yeah.
and it might take 1 year for the rescue to reach you, and there's nothing. You're on an island or you're in a very, very remote place, So if there's nothing else to eat, then you can eat meat. But that's very, exceptional.
Prabhuji, there is one in Odisha, it was in probably 18 something like 19, I don't know the year, but it was called Nongodrupityo. It was a drought happened, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And that's when there was one story, it happened, it was a real thing in which the mother has got a little bit of rice from begging from somewhere, and then she's cooking, and when the rice started boiling, and the smell, she started she has all the kids to feed, but the mother started eating that.
Just the smell.
With the smell, she started scooping a little bit of that boiled rice water, started eating, and it was just little bit. Started eating, and she finished. All the kids are crying to have food. They're saying, "Ma, give us that food." But she is so into, she has been suffering from hunger as well. So she kept eating, and she started licking her hands. She started licking her hands and started chewing it also,
Our own flesh.
our own flesh. This
Yeah.
was so desperate,
Yeah.
that situation when hunger happens
No, but what usually, I mean, this has happened.
in Odisha itself.
Well, yeah, but in Armenia there was a terrible earthquake in 1987. So this one mother and her child were buried under rubble, right? And it took almost a week to find them. So how did she stay alive? She cut herself and let the baby suck her blood to keep the baby alive. Because you have water and you have nourishment in your blood. And she herself I think she also drank her own blood to stay alive. So, those are very serious situations, right? But that's a more interesting story because she sacrificed her own blood to keep the baby alive.
That one doesn't seem like it's
Huh?
it's a dire situation, but it doesn't seem that terrible as opposed to you're killing someone and eating or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah. No,
Yeah, at least, yeah.
there are many examples of airline crashes in a mountainous area, and then people die, and then the other people ate.
Yeah, there was one.
Yeah.
They ate the person's body to stay alive. Yeah, those are horrible situations, but that's highly exceptional. Let's not, that doesn't, the exception does not alter the rule, So we just stick to the rule, and probably never will encounter an exception like that.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Material world is a scary place.
It is, but there's also the protection of Krishna. So, all right, so I think I'm gonna stop there. We've discussed a lot of things today, and
So very deep.
Very nice story.
if you don't have this, you can ask me. I have copies at the temple. We'll go through this whole book. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.